Did you hear Ernest playing it?
I didn't think it would be to listen, sir.
I'm sorry for that. For your sake, I don't play accurately. Anyone can play accurately, but I play with wonderful expression. As far as the piano is concerned, sentiment is my forte. I keep science for life.
Yes, sir.
And speaking of the science of life, have you had the cucumber sandwiches cut for Lady Bracknell?
Yes, sir.
Oh, by the way, Lane, I wrote from Brooklyn on Thursday night when Lord Shorman and Mr. Worthing were dining with me. 8 bottles of champagne were entered as having been consumed.
Yes, sir. 8 bottles and pints.
Why is that at a bachelor's establishment the servants invariably drink champagne? I merely asked for information.
I have observed that in married households, the wine is usually of a higher quality, and the champagne is rarely of a first-rate brand.
Good heavens, is marriage so demoralizing as that?
No, sir, no, sir. I have only been married once. It was a misunderstanding between myself and a young person.
I don't think that I'm much interested in your family life, Lane.
Neither am I, sir.
That will do, Lane. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Lane's views on marriage seem somewhat lax. Really, if the lower orders don't set them a good example, what on earth is the use of them? They seem, as a class, to have no sense of moral responsibility at all.
Mr. Ernest Worthing.
How are you, dear Ernest? What brings you to town?
Oh, pleasure, pleasure. What else should bring in anywhere? Eating as usual, I see, dear Algie.
I believe it is customary to take some slight refreshment at 5 o'clock. Where have you been since last Thursday?
In the country.
What on earth do you do there?
When I was in town, one amuses oneself. When I was in the country, one amuses other people. It's excessively boring.
And who are the people you amuse?
Oh, neighbors.
Got nice neighbors in your part of Shropshire?
Perfectly horrid. I never speak to one of them.
How immensely you must amuse them. By the way, Shropshire is your country, is it not?
Eh? Shropshire? Oh, yes, of course. How? Why all these cups? Why all these cucumber sandwiches? Why is there extravagance in one so young? Who is coming to tea?
Oh, I'm really Aunt Augusta and Gwendolyn.
Oh, how perfectly delightful.
Yes, that is all very well, but I'm afraid Aunt Augusta won't quite like you being here.
May I ask why?
But dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwendolyn is perfectly disgraceful. It is almost as bad as the way Gwendolyn flirts with you.
I am in love with Gwendolyn. I have come down expressly to propose to her.
I thought you had come up for pleasure. I call that business.
No, utterly not.
Slow down. It is very romantic. I believe it is. There's nothing. I really don't see anything romantic in proposing. It is very romantic to be in love, but there is nothing romantic about a definite proposal. Why, one may be accepted. One usually is. The excitement is all over. The very essence of romance is uncertainty. If I ever get married, I'll try to forget the fact.
Oh, I have no doubt about that, dear Algie. The divorce court is especially invented for people whose memories are so curiously constituted.
I believe there's no use speculating on the subject. Divorces are made in heaven. Please don't touch cucumber sandwiches. They are made especially for Aunt Augusta.
But you've been eating them all the time.
That is a different matter. She is my aunt. Have some bread and butter. The bread and butter is for Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn is devoted to bread and butter.
And very good in bread and butter it is too.
My dear fellow, you need not eat it if you're going to eat it all. You act like you are married to her already. You are not married to her already, and I don't think you ever will be.
Why don't you say that?
Well, in the first place, girls never marry the men they flirt with. Girls don't think you're right.
Well, that is nonsense.
It isn't. It is a great truth, and it accounts for the extraordinary number of bachelors one sees all over the place. In the second place, I don't give my consent.
Your consent?
Yes, Gwendolyn is my first cousin, and before I allow her to marry you, we must clear up the whole question of Cecily.
Cecily? What do you mean by Cecily? I don't know anybody by the name of Cecily.
Bring me that cigarette case Mr. Worthing left in the smoking room last time he dined here.
Yes, sir.
My cigarette case? I wish to goodness you would let me know. I've written frantic letters to Scotland Yard about it. I was barely nearly offering a large reward.
Well, I wish you had. I happen to be more than usually hard up.
There's no point offering a large reward if the thing is not found.
I think that is rather mean of you, Ernest. However, it makes no matter, for we look inside. For I look inside the inscription of the cigarette case and find that the thing isn't yours after all.
Of course it's mine. You've seen me with it 100 times. But you have no right whatsoever to read what's written inside. It's a very ungentlemanly thing to read a private cigarette case.
Oh, it is absurd to have a hard and fast rule about what one should and shouldn't read. Half of modern culture depends on what one shouldn't read.
Oh, I'm quite aware of the fact, Your Honor. I don't propose to speak of modern culture. It isn't the type of thing which to speak of in private. I simply want my cigarette case back.
Yes, but this isn't your cigarette case. This cigarette case belongs to someone by the name of Cecily, and you said you didn't know anyone by that name.
Cecily happens to be my aunt.
Your aunt?
Yes. Charming old lady she is too. Lives at Tunbridge Wells. Just give it back to me, Algie.
Well, why did you call herself Little Cecily if she's your aunt and lives in Tunbridge Wells?
My dear fellow, what is there in that? Some aunts are tall, some aunts are not tall. No matter that, surely an aunt would be allowed to decide for herself. You seem to think every aunt is exactly like your aunt. It's absurd. For heaven's sake, give it back to me, Algie.
Yes, but why does your aunt call you her uncle? There's no objection, I admit, to an aunt being a small aunt, but an aunt, no matter her size may be. She call her own nephew her uncle. I just can't quite make out. Besides, your name isn't Ernest, Jack at all, it's Ernest.
It isn't Ernest, it's Jack.
You've always told me it was Ernest. I have introduced you to everyone as Ernest. You're the most earnest-looking person I've ever known. Look, it is on your cards. Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4, the Albany. I'll keep this as proof if he ever tries to deny me or Gwendolyn or anyone else.
Well, my name is Ernest in town and Jack in the country. And the cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Yes, but that still don't explain for the fact that your small aunt Cecily, who lives in Tunbridge Wells, calls you her dear uncle. Come, old boy, you'd best get the whole thing out all at once.
My dear fellow, you talk exactly as if you're a dentist. Very vulgar speak like a dentist or a novel. It produces a false impression.
Well, that is exactly what dentists do. May I mention that I always suspected you of being confirmed in Cedar Bunbury, and now I know it to be true.
Bunburyist? What on earth do you mean by Bunburyist?
I'll explain to you that meaning of the incomparable expression as soon as you tell me why you were Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
Well, produce my cigarette case first.
Here it is. Now produce your explanation, and pray make it improbable.
My dear fellow, there is nothing improbable about my explanation at all. In fact, it's perfectly ordinary. Old Mr. Thomas Cardew made me his will guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Cecily, who addresses me as her uncle, out of motive respects they could not possibly appreciate, lives at my place in the country under the charge of her admirable governess, Miss Prism.
Where is that place in the country, by the way?
Oh, that is nothing to you, dear boy. You're not going to be invited. I may tell you candidly that the place is not in Shropshire.
I suspected that, my dear fellow. I have been buried all over the place on 2 separate occasions. Now go on. Now go on, tell me why you were Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
My dear fellow, I don't know whether you'll be able to understand my real motives. You're hardly serious enough. When one is placed in the position of guardian, one has to adopt a very high moral tone on all subjects. It is one's duty to do so. Because a high moral tone can hardly be said to conduce very much of either one's health or one's happiness. And in order to go up to town, I've created a fake brother by the name of Ernest who lives in Albany, who gets into the most dreadful scrapes. That, my dear Algie, is the truth, pure and simple.
The truth is rarely pure and never simple. Modern life would be very tedious if it were either, and modern literacy a complete impossibility.
That wouldn't at all be a bad thing.
Literary criticism is not your forte, my dear fellow. Don't try it. Leave that to the people who have been to university. They do it so well in the daily paper. What you really are is a Bunburyist. I was always right in suspecting you were a Bunburyist. You're one of the most advanced Bunburyists I know.
What on earth do you mean?
You've invented a very useful younger brother by the name of Ernest, so that you may be able to go up to town as often as you like. I've invented a very invaluable, permanent invalid by the name of Bunbury, so that I'm able to go down to town whenever I choose. Bunbury is perfectly invaluable. In fact, if it wasn't for Bunbury's extraordinary bad health, I wouldn't be able to dine with you tonight at Willis's.
I would ask you down with me anywhere tonight.
I know. You are perfectly careless about sending out invitations. Nothing annoys me more than to not receive invitations.
You'd much better dine with your Aunt Augusta.
I will do nothing of the sort. To begin with, I dine there on Monday, and once a week is quite enough to dine with one's own relations. In the second place, every time I do dine there, I'm always treated as a member of the family, and either sent down with no woman at all, or 2. In the third place, I know exactly who she will place me next to. She will place me next to Mary Farquhar, who always flirts with her husband across the dinner table. That is not very pleasant. Indeed, it is not even decent. The amount of women in London who flirt with their husband is perfectly scandalous. And that sort of thing is on the rise. It looks so bad, it is like washing one's clean linen in public. Besides, now that I know you to be confirmed Bunburys, I naturally want to talk to you about Bunbury. I want to tell you the rules.
I'm not Bunbury's at all. If Gwendolyn accepts me, I'm going to kill my brother. Indeed, I think I'll kill him in any case. Cecily's a little too much interested in him. It's rather bored. So I'm going to get rid of my brother, and I highly suggest you do the same with with your invalid friend who has the absurd name.
Nothing will induce me to part with Bunbury. And if you ever get married, which seems to me extremely problematic, you'll be glad to know Bunbury. A man who marries without knowing Bunbury has a very tedious time of it.
If I married a charming girl like Gwendolyn, I certainly wouldn't want to know a Bunbury.
Then your wife will. You don't seem to realize in a married household, 3 is company, 2 is none.
That is the theory that the corrupt French drama has been propounded for the last 50 years.
Yes, and the happy English home proved half the time.
My dear fellow, don't be cynical. It's perfectly easy to be cynical.
It's not easy to be anything nowadays. There is such a lot of beastly competition about. That must be Aunt Augusta. Only relatives and creditors ever ring in that Wagnerian manner. Now if I get her out of the way for 10 minutes so that you may have the opportunity to propose to Gwendolyn, may I dine with you tonight at Willis's?
I suppose so if you want to.
Yes, but you must be serious about it. I hate people who are not serious about meals. It is so shallow of them.
Lady Bracknell and Miss Fairfax.
Good afternoon, dear Algernon. I hope you are behaving very well.
I am feeling very well, Aunt Augusta.
That's not quite the same thing. In fact, the two things rarely go together.
Dear me, you are smart.
I am always smart. Am I not, Mr. Worthing?
You're quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, I hope I'm not that. You'll leave no room for development, and I intend to develop in many directions.
I'm sorry if we are a little late, Algernon, but I was obliged to call on dear Lady Marbury. I hadn't been there since her poor husband's death. I never saw a woman so altered. She looks quite 20 years younger. And now I'll have a cup of tea and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Certainly, Aunt Augusta.
Gwendolyn, won't you come sit here?
Thanks, Mama. I'm quite comfortable where I am.
Good heavens, Lane! Why are there no cucumber sandwiches? I ordered them specially.
They were all out in the market this morning. I went down twice.
No cucumbers?
Not even for ready money, sir.
I'm greatly distressed, Aunt Augusta. Oh, that will do, Lane. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'm greatly distressed, Aunt Augusta, about there being no cucumber sandwiches, not even for ready money.
It really makes no matter, Algernon. I had some crumpets with Lady Harbury, who seems to me to be living entirely for pleasure now.
Yes, I hear her hair has turned quite gold from grief.
It certainly has changed its color, although from what cause I, of course, cannot say. Thank you, Algernon. I have quite a treat for you tonight. I'm going to send you down with Mary Farquhar. She is such a nice woman and so attentive to her husband. It's delightful to watch them.
I'm afraid, Aunt Augusta, I shall have to give up the pleasure of dining with you tonight after all.
I hope not, Algernon, who put my table completely out. Your poor uncle would have to dine upstairs. Fortunately, he is accustomed to that.
It is a great bore, and he'd hardly say a terrible disappointment. But the fact is, I've just had a telegram to say that my poor friend Bunbury is dreadfully ill. They seem to think I should be with him.
Well, I must say, Algernon, that I think it is high time for Mr. Bunbury to make up his mind whether he was going to live or to die. His shilly-shallying with the question is uncalled for, nor do I, in any way, agree with the modern sympathy with invalids. I consider it morbid. Health is the primary duty of life. I'm always telling that to your poor uncle, but he never seems to take much notice, as far as any improvement in his ailment goes. I should be much obliged if you would ask Mr. Bunbury, from me, to be as kind enough as to not have a relapse on Saturday. For I rely on you to arrange my music for me. It is my last reception, and one wants something that will encourage conversation, particularly at the end of the season, when everyone has said practically everything they had to say, which in most cases was probably not much.
I will speak to Bunbury, Aunt Augusta, if he is still conscious, and I think I can promise that he'll be alright by Saturday. Of course, the music is a great difficulty. If one plays good music, people don't listen. If one plays bad music, people don't talk. But I'll run it over the program I've drawn out, if you'll just come into the next room for a moment.
Thank you, Algernon. It is very thoughtful of you. And I'm sure the program will be delightful after a few expurgations. French songs I cannot possibly allow. People always seem to think that they are improper, and either look shocked, which is vulgar, or laugh, which is worse. But German sounds a thoroughly respectable language, and indeed, I believe it is so. Gwendolyn, you will accompany me.
Certainly, Mom.
Charming day it has been, Miss Fairfax.
Pray, don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Wilde. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I always feel quite uncertain that they mean something else. And that makes me so nervous.
I do mean something else.
I thought so. In fact, I'm never wrong.
And I'd like to be able to take advantage of Lady Bracknell's temporary absence.
I would certainly advise you to do so. Mama has a way of coming back suddenly into a room that I've often had to speak to her about.
Gwendolyn, I've never loved anybody in the world but you. I've admired you more than any girl since, well, I met you.
Yes, I'm quite well aware of the fact. And I often wish that in public at any rate you had been more demonstrative. For me, you've always had an irresistible fascination. Even before I met you, I was far from indifferent to you. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals. The fact is constantly mentioned in more expensive monthly magazines and has reached the provincial pulpits, I am told. And my ideal has always been to love someone in the name Ernest. There is something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. The moment Algernon first mentioned to me that he had a friend called Ernest, I knew I was destined to love him.
You really love me, Gwendolyn?
Passionately.
Oh, darling, you don't know how happy you've made me.
My own Ernest.
But you don't mean to say that you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Ernest.
But your name is Ernest.
Yes, I know it is, but supposing you have something else, you mean to say you couldn't love me then?
That is clearly a metaphysical speculation. And like most metaphysical speculations, there's very little reference at all to the actual facts of real life as we know them.
To speak quite candidly, darling, I don't much care for the name of Ernest. I don't think it suits me at all.
It suits you perfectly. It is a divine name. It has music of its own. It produces vibrations.
But supposing it was some way nicer name, like Jack, for instance.
Jack? No. Jack, if any at all. It does not thrill. It produces absolutely no vibrations. I have known several Jacks, and they all, without exception, were more than usually played. Besides, Jack is a notorious domesticity for John. I pity any woman who is married to a man called John. She probably would never be allowed to know the entrancing pleasure of a single moment's solitude. The only really safe name is Ernest.
Gwendolyn, I need to get Chris on. We must get married at once.
Married? Mr. Worthing.
Well, surely you know that I love you, and I'm not to feel that you feel completely indifferent to me.
I adore you, but you have not proposed to me yet. Nothing has been said at all about marriage. The subject has not even been touched on.
Well, may I propose to you now?
I think that it would be an admirable opportunity, and to spare you any possible disappointment, Mr. Worthing, I'm quite frankly beforehand, and fully determined to accept you.
Gwendolyn!
Yes, Mr. Worthing, what have you got to say to me?
You know what I've got to say to you.
Yes, but you don't say it.
Gwendolyn, will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling. How long you've been about it.
My own one. I've never loved anyone in the world but you.
Yes, but men often propose for practice. My brother Gerald does. All my girlfriends tell me so. What wonderfully bright eyes you have, Ernest. They're quite bright. I hope that you will always look at me just like that, especially when there are other people present.
Mr. Worthing, rise, sir, from this semi-recumbent posture. It is most indecorous.
Mama, I must beg you to retire. This is no place for you. Besides, Mr. Worthing is not quite finished yet.
Finished what, may I ask?
I am engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mama.
Pardon me, but you are not engaged to anyone. When you do become engaged to someone, I or your father will inform you of the fact. An engagement should come on a young girl as a surprise. Pleasant or unpleasant as the case may be, it is hardly a matter that she could be allowed to arrange for herself. And now I have a few questions to put to you, Mr. Worthing. While I'm making these inquiries, you, Gwendolyn, will wait for me below in the carriage.
Mama!
In the carriage, Gwendolyn! Gwendolyn, the carriage!
Thank you, Lady Bracknell. I prefer standing.
I feel obliged to inform you that you are not down on my list of eligible young men. Although I have the same list as the dear Duchess of Bolton has. We work together, in fact. However, I'm quite ready to enter your name should your answers be what a truly affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Yes, I'm afraid I smoke.
I'm glad to hear it. A man should always have an occupation of some kind. There are far too many idle men wandering around London as it is. How old are you?
29.
That is a very good age to be married at. I've always been of the opinion that a man who desires to get married should either know nothing or everything. Which do you know?
I know nothing, Lady Bracknell.
I'm pleased to hear it. I do not approve of anything that tampers with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate, exotic fruit. Touch it and the bloom is gone. The whole theory of modern education is radically unsound. Fortunately, in London at any rate, education produces no effect whatsoever. If it did, it would prove a serious danger to the upper classes and probably lead to acts of violence in Grosvenor Square. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
In land or in investments?
In investments chiefly.
That is satisfactory. What between the duties expected of one during one's lifetime and the duties exacted from one after one's death, land has ceased to become either a profit or a pleasure. It gives one responsibility and keeps one from keeping it up. That is all that can be said about land.
I have a house with some land, of course, attached to about 1,500 acres, but I don't depend on that for my real income. As far as I can make it out, the poachers are the only ones who make anything out of it.
A country house? How many bedrooms? Well, that point can be cleared up afterwards. You have a townhouse, I hope. A girl with a simple, unspoiled nature like Gwendolyn could hardly be expected to reside in the country.
I have a townhouse, but it was left by the year to Lady Bloxham. I can get it back at 6 months' notice, of course.
Lady Bloxham? I don't know her.
Oh, she goes around very little. She is very advanced in years.
Nowadays, that is no guarantee of respectability of character. However, what number in Belgrave Square?
149.
The unfashionable side. I knew there was something. However, that could easily be altered.
The fashion or the side?
Both, if necessary, I presume. What are your politics?
I'm afraid I have none. I'm a liberal unionist.
Oh, they count as Tories. They dine with us, or come down in the evening at any rate. Now to minor matters. Are your parents living?
I'm afraid I have lost both my parents.
To lose one parent, Mr. Worthing, may be regarded as misfortune. To lose both looks like carelessness. Who was your father? He was evidently a man of some wealth. Was he born in what the radical papers call the purple of commerce? Or did he rise from the ranks of aristocracy?
I would say that my parents seem to have lost me, but the closer truth is to say that I seem to have lost them.
I was
found.
Found?
Yes. The late Mr. Thomas Cardew was given a bag in exchange for his own. He had a first-class ticket for Worthing in his pocket. Worthing is a place in Sussex. It is a seaside resort.
And where did this charitable gentleman, who had the first-class ticket to the seaside resort, find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag?
Yes, a somewhat large tan leather handbag with handles to it. An ordinary handbag, in fact.
In what locality did this Mr. James or Thomas Cardew come across this ordinary handbag?
The cloakroom at Victoria Station.
The cloakroom at Victoria Station?
Yes, the Brighton line.
The line is immaterial, Mr. Worthing. I must confess, I feel somewhat bewildered by what you have just told me. To be born, or at any rate bred in a handbag, whether it had handles or not, seems to me to display contempt for the ordinary decencies of family life, which reminds me of one of the worst excesses of the French Revolution. And I presume you know what that unfortunate movement led to? As for the particular locality in which the handbag was found, a cloakroom at a railway station might serve to conceal a social indiscretion. Has probably indeed been used for that purpose before now, but could hardly be regarded as an assured basis for a recognized position in good society.
I don't know what you would advise me to do. I would say nothing less that I would do anything to ensure Gwendolyn's happiness.
I would strongly advise you, Mr. Worthing, to try and acquire some relations as soon as possible and to make a definite effort to produce at any rate one parent of either sex before the season is quite over.
I don't know how you expect me to do that. I can produce the handbag any moment. It's in my dressing room in my house. I really think that should satisfy you, Lady Bracknell.
Me? Me, sir? What has it to do with me? You can hardly imagine that I, or Lord Bracknell, would dream of allowing our only daughter, a girl brought up with the utmost care, to marry into a cloakroom and form an alliance with a parcel. Good morning, Miss Worthing.
Good morning. For goodness sake, Aldi, don't play that ghastly tune. How idiotic you are.
Didn't it go off all right, old boy? You don't mean to say Gwendolyn refused you. I notice the way she has, always refusing people. I think it's most ill-natured of her.
Oh, Gwendolyn is as right as a trivet. As far as she's concerned, we are engaged to be married. It's her mother that is absolutely unbearable. Never met such a gorgon. I don't really know what a gorgon is like, but I'm sure she is one of them. In any case, she's a monster that being a myth. I beg your pardon, Algie. I suppose I shouldn't talk about your aunt in this way before you.
My dear boy, I love hearing relations abused. It is the only thing that makes me put up with them at all. Relations are something like a tedious pack of people who have the remotest knowledge about how to live or the smallest instinct about when to die.
Well, that is nonsense.
It isn't.
Well, I don't want to argue about the matter. You're always going to argue about things.
That is exactly what things are originally made for.
If I thought that, I'd shoot myself. You don't think there's any chance of Gwendolyn becoming like her mother in about 150 years, do you?
All women become like their mothers. That is their tragedy. No man does. That's his.
Is that clever?
It is perfectly phrased, and quite as true as any observation in civilized life should be.
I am sick to death
I am sick to death of cleverness. Everybody's clever nowadays. You can't go anywhere without meeting clever people. Things become an absolute public nuisance. I wish to goodness there's a few fools left.
We have.
I would extremely like to meet them. What do they talk about?
Fools? Oh, about the clever people, of course. By the way, have you told Gwendolyn about your being Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
Oh, you don't tell that type of thing to people.
The truth isn't quite as
Truth isn't the type of thing you tell people.
What extraordinary.
What extraordinary did you have a way to behave to women?
The only way to behave to a woman is to make love to her if she's pretty, and to someone else if she's plain.
Well, that is nonsense.
What about your brother?
Oh, what about your brother? What about the profligate Ernest?
Oh, I shall have gotten rid of him by the end of the week.
Someone died in Paris.
Oh, I'll say he died in Paris of apoplexy. Lots of people die of apoplexy quite suddenly, don't they?
Yes, but it's hereditary, my dear fellow. You'd much better say a severe chill.
Severe chill? Are you sure it's not hereditary?
Of course it isn't.
Oh, all right then. Poor Ernest is carried off in Paris by a severe chill. That gets rid of him.
But I thought you said that Miss Cardew was a little too much interested in your poor brother. Won't you feel his loss a great deal?
Oh, that is all right. Cecily isn't a silly romantic girl. She has a capital appetite, goes on long walks, and doesn't pay any attention to her German lessons.
I'd rather like to meet Cecily.
I will do everything in my power to make sure you never do. Cecily Pretty is only 18.
Have you told Gwendolyn about your excessively pretty ward who is only just 18?
Oh, you don't blurt these things out to people. Cecily and Gwendolyn are bound to be great friends. I bet you anything you like that after 30 minutes they will be calling each other sister.
Women call each other a lot of things before they call each other sister. Now, if you want to get a good table at Wilkes, you really must go. Did you know it is nearly 7?
Oh, it is always nearly 7.
Well, I'm hungry.
I never knew you when you weren't.
What shall we do after we eat? Shall we go to a theater?
Oh no, I loathe listening.
Well then, shall we go to a club?
Oh no, I hate talking.
Well then, shall we trot around the Empire at 10?
Oh no, I hate looking at things. It's so silly.
Well then, what shall we do?
Nothing!
It is awfully hard work doing nothing. Although I don't mind if there's no definite object of any kind.
Miss Fairfax.
Gwendolyn, upon my word!
Algie, kindly turn your back. I have something very particular to say to Mr. Worthing.
Gwendolyn, I don't think I can allow this at all.
Algie, you always adopt a strictly immoral attitude towards life. I don't think you're quite old enough to do that yet. We may never be married. From the expression on Mama's face, I fear we never shall. Few parents nowadays pay any regard to what their children say to them. The old-fashioned respect for the young is fast dying out. Whatever influence I had over Mama, I lost at the age of 3. And although she may prevent us from becoming man and wife, and when I may marry often, and I may marry someone else, there is nothing she could possibly do that could alter my eternal devotion to her.
Dear Gwendolyn,
The story of your romantic origin, as related to me by Mama, with unpleasing comments, has naturally stirred the deeper fibers of my nature. Your Christian name has an irresistible fascination. The simplicity of your character makes you exquisitely incomprehensible to me. Your town address at the Albany I have. What is your address in the country?
the Manor House, Bolton, Hertfordshire.
There is good postal service, I suppose. It may be necessary to do something desperate. That, of course, will take serious consideration. I will communicate with you daily.
My own one.
How long do you remain in town?
Till Monday.
Good. Algie, you may turn around now.
Thanks, I turned around already.
You may also turn.
You will let me see you up to your carriage, will you not?
Certainly.
I'll see Miss Fairfax out, Lane.
Yes, sir.
A glass of sherry, Lane.
Yes, sir.
Tomorrow, Lane, I'm going Bunbury.
Yes, sir.
You can put my
She'll probably not.
Yeah, I shall probably not be back till Monday. You can put all my smoking jacket, my dress clothes, and my Bunbury shoes.
Yes, sir.
I hope tomorrow will be a fine day, Lane.
It never is, sir.
Lane, you're a perfect pessimist.
Do my best to please, sir.
That will do, Lane. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
There's a sensible, intellectual girl. The only girl I've ever cared for in my life. What are you so amused at?
Oh, I'm just a little worried about Bunbury. That is all.
If you don't take care of your friend Bunbury, he'll get into a serious scrape someday.
I love scrapes. They're the only thing that are never serious.
That is nonsense.
Nobody ever does.
Cecily, surely such a utilitarian occupation as the watering of flowers is rather Moulton's duty than yours, especially at a moment when intellectual pleasures awaits you. Your German grammar is on the table. Pray it open at page 15. We will repeat yesterday's lesson.
But I don't like German. It isn't at all a becoming language. I know perfectly well that I look quite plain after my German lesson.
Child, you know how anxious your guardian is that you should improve yourself in every way. He laid particular stress on your German as he was leaving for town yesterday. Indeed, he always lays stress on your German as he is leaving for town.
Uncle Jack is so very serious. Sometimes he's so serious, I think he cannot be quite well.
Your guardian enjoys the best of health, and his gravity of demeanor is especially to be commended in one so comparatively young as he is. I know no one with a higher sense of duty and responsibility.
I suppose that is why he often looks a little bored when we three are together.
Cecily, I'm surprised at you. Mr. Worthing has many troubles in his life. Idle merriment and triviality would be out of place in his conversation. You must remember his constant anxiety about that unfortunate young man, his brother.
I wish Uncle Jack would allow that unfortunate young man, his brother, to come down here sometime. We might have a good influence over him. Miss Prism, I know you certainly would. You know, German and geology and that kind of thing influence a man very much.
I do not think that even I could produce any effect on a character that, according to his own brother's admission, is irretrievably weak and vacillating. Indeed, I'm not sure I would desire to reclaim him. I'm not in favor of this modern mania for turning bad people into good people at a moment's notice. As a man sows, so let him reap. You must put away your diary, Cecily. I do not see why you should keep a diary at all.
I keep a diary in order to enter the wonderful secrets of my life. If I didn't write them down, I should probably forget all about them.
Memory, my dear child, is the diary we all carry about with us. Yes, but it often chronicles the things that have never happened and couldn't possibly have happened. I believe that memory is responsible for nearly all 3 of the volume novels that Moody sends us. Do not speak slightingly of the 3-volume novel, Cecily. I wrote one myself in earlier days. Did you really, Miss Prism? How wonderfully clever you are. I hope it did not end happily. I do not like novels that end happily. They depress me so much. The good ended happily, the bad unhappily. That is what fiction means. I suppose so. But it seems very unfair. And was your novel ever published? Alas, no. The manuscript was unfortunately abandoned. I used the word in the sense of lost or mislaid. To your work, child, these speculations are profitless. But I see dear Dr. Chasuble coming up through the garden. Dr. Chasuble, this is indeed a pleasure.
And how are we this morning? I hope you are well, Miss Prism.
Miss Prism has just been complaining of a slight headache. I think it would do her so much good to have a short stroll with you in the park, Dr. Chasuble.
Cecily, I've not mentioned anything about a headache.
Yes, I know that, dear Miss Prism. But I felt instinctively that you had a headache. In fact, I was thinking of that, and not of my German lesson when the rector came in.
I hope you are not inattentive, Cecily.
Oh, I'm afraid I am.
This is strange. Why, Miss Prism's pupil, I would hang upon her lips. I said metaphorically, of course. My metaphor is drawn from these.
Mr. Worthing, I suppose.
Oh, Mr. Worthing, I suppose, has not returned from town yet?
No, we do not expect him until Monday afternoon.
He is not one of those. He likes to spend his Sundays in London, usually. He is not one of those whose sole aim is enjoyment, unlike that unfortunate young man his brother seems to be. I mustn't disturb Egeria as my pupil any longer.
Egeria? My name's Letitia, Doctor.
Classical illusion by the pagan authors. I have no doubt that I will see you both at Evanshome.
I think, dear Doctor, that I will have a stroll with them. I find I do have a headache after all, and a walk might do it good.
With pleasure, Miss Prism, with pleasure. We will go to the parks and the schools and back.
That would be delightful. Cecily, you will read your political economy in my absence. The chapter on the fall of rupee you may omit. It is somewhat too sensational. Even these metallic problems have their melodramatic side.
Horrid political economy! Horrid German! Horrid German!
Mr. Ernest Worthing has just driven over from the station.
Didn't you tell him Mr. Worthing was in the town?
No, he seemed very much disappointed that you and Miss Prism were in the garden. He seemed anxious to speak with you privately for a moment.
Mr. Ernest Worthing, B40, out. W. Uncle Jack's brother?
Yes.
Ask Mr. Ernest Worthing to come down here, and you'd better ask housekeeping for a room for him.
Yes, miss.
I've never met any really wicked person before. I feel rather frightened. I'm afraid he will look just like everyone else. He does. You are my little cousin Cecily, I'm sure. You are under some strange misconception. I'm not little at all. In fact, I'm more than usually tall for my age. But I am your cousin Cecily. You, I see from your card, are Uncle Jack's brother. My cousin Ernest, my wicked cousin Ernest. Oh, I'm not really that wicked at all. You mustn't think that I'm wicked. If you are not, you have certainly deceived us all in a very inexcusable manner. I hope you have not been leading a double life, pretending to be wicked and being really good all along. Well, of course I haven't been rather reckless. I'm glad to hear it. In fact, now that you mention it, I have been rather bad in my own small way. I don't think you should be so proud of that, though I'm sure it must have felt very pleasant. It is much pleasanter being here with you. I don't understand how you are here at all. Uncle Jack won't be back till Monday afternoon. Oh, that is a great disappointment. I'm glad to go up by the next train on Monday morning. I have an appointment that I'm anxious to miss. Couldn't you miss it anywhere but in London? No, the appointment is in London. Well, I know, of course, how important it is not to miss a business engagement if one wants to retain any sense of the beauty of life. Though I still think you should wait till Uncle Jack gets back. I know he wants to speak to you about your emigrating.
About my what?
You're emigrating. Uncle Jack has gone up to buy your outfit.
I certainly wouldn't let Jack buy my outfit. He has no sense in neckties at all.
I don't think you will require a necktie. He's sending you to Australia.
Australia? I'd sooner die.
Well, I said on Wednesday at dinner that you would have to choose between this world, the next world, and Australia.
The accounts I received from Australia and this world are not particularly encouraging. I think this world is good enough for me, Cousin Cecily.
Yes, but are you good enough for it?
I'm afraid I'm not that. That is why I want you to reform me. You might make that your mission, if you don't mind, Cousin Cecily.
I'm afraid I have no time this afternoon.
Then do you mind my reforming myself this afternoon?
It's rather quixotic of you, but I think you'd better try.
Thank you. I will. I feel better already.
You are looking a little worse.
That is because I'm hungry.
Oh, how thoughtless of me. I should have remembered when one is going to lead an entirely new life. One requires regular and wholesome meals. Won't you come in?
Thank you. But may I have a buttonhole first? I have never any appetite unless I have a buttonhole first.
A Marshall nail?
No, I'd sooner have a pink rose.
Why?
Because you are like a pink rose, Cousin Cecily.
I don't think it can be right for you to talk to me like that. Miss Prism never talks to me like that.
Then Miss Prism is a short-sighted old lady. You are the prettiest girl I ever saw.
Miss Prism says all good looks are a snare.
A snare that every sensible man would like to be caught in.
Oh, I don't think I would like to catch a sensible man. I wouldn't know what to talk to him about.
You are too much in love with your daughter, Possible. You should get married. A misanthrope I can understand. A womanthrope? Never.
Believe me, I don't deserve so idealistic a phrase. The priesthood, as well as the practice of the primitive church, was distinctly against matrimony.
That is obviously the reason why the primitive church has not lasted up to the present day. And you do not seem to understand, dear doctor, that by persistently remaining single, a man converts himself into a permanent public temptation. Men should be more careful. This very celibacy leads weaker vessels astray.
But is man not equally as attractive when married?
No married man is ever attractive except to his wife. That depends on the intellectual sympathies of the woman. Maturity can always be depended on. Ripeness can be trusted. Young women are green. I spoke horticulturally. My metaphor was drawn from fruits. But where is Cecily?
Perhaps she follows us to the schools.
Mr. Worthing!
Mr. Worthing?
This is indeed a surprise. We did not look for you until Monday afternoon.
Dear Mr. Worthing, I trust this garb of woe does not betoken some great calamity.
I've returned sooner than I expected. I hope you are well, Dr. Tossable.
And your line again, Mr. Worthing.
Mr. Worthing, I trust this garb of woe does not betoken a terrible calamity.
My brother.
Your brother still leading his life of pleasure?
Dead.
Dead?
Quite dead.
What a lesson he will profit.
What a lesson for him. I trust he will profit by it.
My sincerest condolences. You at least have the consolation of knowing that you were a kind and forgiving brother.
Poor Ernest. He had many faults, but this is a sad, sad blow.
Very sad indeed. Were you with him at the end?
Oh no, he died abroad. In Paris, in fact.
Was the cause of death mentioned?
A severe chill, it seems.
As a man sows, so shall he reap.
Charity, Miss Prism, charity. None of us are perfect. I'm peculiarly susceptible to draughts. Will the interment take place here?
No, he seemed to have a desire to be buried in Paris.
In Paris? I fear that hardly points to any very serious state of mind at the last. You would no doubt wish for me to make some allusion to this tragic domestic affliction next Sunday. My sermon of the meaning of manna is in the wilderness can all be adapted to almost any occasion, joyful or in present matter distressing. I have preached at harvest celebrations, christenings, confirmations, on days of humiliation, and festal days. The last time I delivered it was in the cathedral as a charity sermon on behalf of the Society of the Prevention of Discontent among Upper Orders. The bishop who was present was much struck by some of the analogies I drew.
Oh, that reminds me. You mentioned christenings, I think, Dr. Chasuble? I suppose you know how to christen all right, and that you're continually christening, aren't you?
It is, I regret to say, one of the rector's most important duties in this parish. I've often spoken to the poorer classes on the subject, but they do not seem to know what thrift is.
But is there any particular infant who you wish to christen?
No, I am very fond of children, but I would like to be christened myself this afternoon, if that suits you.
But surely you have not already been christened yourself.
I don't remember anything about it.
But have you any grave doubts on the subject?
I certainly intend to have.
Happy, I will trot around about 5.
Oh, I'll try around about 5.
Not at all.
Perfectly.
Perfectly.
In fact, I have 2 similar ceremonies. In fact, I have 2 similar ceremonies, twins, with poor Mr. Carter, who works on your own estate.
Oh, I don't want to be christened along with other children. That's so childish.
Would
5:30 do?
Yeah, certainly.
And now, dear Mr. Worthing, I will not intrude.
And now, dear Mr. Worthing, I will no longer intrude upon your house of sorrow.
I would merely beg you not to be
distressed.
What seem to us bitter
trials are often blessings in disguise.
This seems to be a blessing of an extremely obvious kind.
Oh, Uncle Jack, I'm pleased to see you. But what horrid clothes you have on. Do go and change them. Cecily.
My child.
Do look happy. You look as if you had a toothache, and I've got such a surprise for you. Who do you think is in the dining room? Your brother.
Who?
Your brother Ernest. He arrived about half an hour ago.
That is nonsense. I haven't got a brother.
Oh, don't say that. However badly he has treated you in the past, he is still your brother. You wouldn't be so heartless as to disown him. I will go call him, and you will shake hands with him, won't you, Uncle Jack?
These are very joyful tidings.
After we've all been resigned to his loss, his sudden return seems to me so peculiarly distressing.
My brother's in the dining room? I don't know what it all means. I think it's perfectly absurd. Good heavens!
Brother John, I have come down expressly to tell you that I'm very sorry for all the trouble I've caused, and I intend to lead a better life in the future. Uncle Jack, you're not going to refuse your own brother's hand?
Nothing will induce me to take his hand. I think his coming down is perfectly disgraceful. He knows very well why.
Uncle Jack, do be nice. Uncle Jack, do be nice. There's some good in everyone. Ernest has just been telling me about his poor invalid friend Bunbury, who he goes to visit so often. And surely there's much good in one who's kind to an invalid and goes and leaves the pleasures of London to sit by a bed of pain.
Oh, he's been telling you about Bunbury, has he?
Yes, he's told me all about poor Bunbury and his state of health.
Well, I won't have to talk to you about Bunbury or anything else. It's enough to drive him perfectly frantic.
I have to admit, the faults are all on my side, but I'd say Brother John's coldness is particularly painful, especially since it's the first time I've come down here. Uncle Jack, if you don't shake hands with Ernest, I will never forgive you.
Never forgive me?
Never, never, never.
Alright, this will be the last time I ever do it.
I believe that we should no longer disturb the reunification of these two brothers.
Cecily, you will come with us.
Certainly. My little task of reconciliation is over.
You've done a great deed today, child.
Let us not be premature in our judgments.
I feel very happy.
How you young scoundrel? I don't allow any Bunbury in here.
That's absurd.
I have put Mr. Ernest's things in the room next to yours, sir.
What?
His luggage, sir. I have unpacked it in the room next to yours.
His luggage?
Yes, sir. 3 portmanteaus, a large dressing case, 2 hat boxes, and a very large luncheon basket.
I'm afraid I can't stay for more than a week this time.
Merriman, order a dog cart for Mr. Ernest. He has been suddenly called back to town.
Oh, yes, sir.
How do you fearful scoundrel? I have not been called back to town at all.
Yes, you have.
I've not heard anyone call me.
Your duty as a gentleman calls you back.
My duty as a gentleman has never interfered with my pleasures in life in the smallest degree.
I can quite understand that.
Well, Cecily's a darling.
Don't talk about Miss Carter like that. I don't like it.
Well, I don't like your clothes. You look perfectly ridiculous in them. It is very childish to be in mourning for a man who is actually staying in your house as a guest. Yes.
You're certainly not staying here for a full week as a guest or anything else. You got to catch the 4-5.
Well, I certainly wouldn't leave you while you're in mourning. It would be most unkind of me. Why, if I were in mourning, you would stay with me, I suppose. I would think it very unkind if you didn't.
Well, will you go if I change my clothes?
Yes, but you must be quick about it. I have never seen someone take so long to change their clothes with such little results.
I was always dressed as you always are.
If I'm occasionally a little overdressed, I make up for it for being always overeducated.
Your vanity is ridiculous. Conduct is an outrage. And your presence in my garden is perfectly absurd. However, you've got to catch the 4-5. And I hope you have a good journey back to town. This bumbering, as you call it, has not been a great success for you.
I think it's been a great success. I am in love with Cecily, and that is everything. But I must see her before I go and make arrangements for another bunbury. Ah, there she is.
Oh, I merely came back to water the flowers. I thought you were with Uncle Jack.
No, he's going to order the dog cart for me.
Is it going to take you for a nice drive?
No, he's going to send me away.
Then have we got to part?
I'm afraid so. It's a very painful parting.
It is always sad to part from those who one has known for a comparatively short amount of time. The absence of an old friend one can endure with equanimity, but even a momentary separation from anyone whom one has just been introduced to is almost unbearable.
Thank you.
The dog cart is waiting.
It can wait, Merriman, for 5 minutes.
Yes, miss.
Cecily, I hope I shall not offend you if I say quite frankly and openly that you seem to me to be in every way the absolute visible personification of absolute perfection.
I think your frankness does you great credit, Ernest. If you allow me, I will copy your remarks into my diary.
You have a diary? I'd do anything to look at it, may I?
Oh no, it is simply a very young girl's record of her thoughts and impressions, consequently meant for publication. I hope you will order a copy when it goes into volume form. But pray, don't stop. I delight in taking down from dictation. I have reached absolute perfection. You can go on. I'm quite ready for more. Oh, don't cough. When one is dictating, one should speak fluently and not cough. Besides, I don't know how to spell a cough.
Cecily, ever since I looked upon your wonderful and incomparable beauty, I have dared to love you wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly.
I don't think that you should say that you love me wildly, passionately, devotedly, and hopelessly. Hopelessly doesn't seem to make much sense.
The dog cart is waiting.
Tell it to come round next week at the same hour.
Yes, miss.
Uncle Jack would be very much annoyed if he knew you were staying till next week at the same hour.
Oh, I don't care for Uncle Jack. I don't care about anyone in the world but you. You will marry me, won't you, Cecily?
Oh, you silly boy. Why, we've been engaged for the last 3 months.
For the last 3 months?
Yes, it'll be exactly 3 on Thursday.
But Cecily, how did we become engaged?
Well, ever since Uncle Jack first confessed that he had a younger brother who was very wicked and bad, you, of course, formed a chief topic between me and Miss Prism. And, of course, a man who's talked about much is always very attractive. One seems there must be something in him after all. I dare say it was foolish of me, Ernest, but I fell in love with you.
Darling, then when was the engagement actually settled?
On the 14th of February last, worn out by your entire ignorance of my existence, I determined to end the matter one way or another, and after a long struggle with myself, I accepted you under this dear old tree here. The next day, I
went down and bought this little ring in your name, and here is the bangle that I promised to always wear. Yes, you've wonderfully good taste. It's the excuse I've always given for your leading such a bad life. And here's the box in which I keep all your dearest letters.
My own sweet Cecily, I've never written any letters.
Oh, you need hardly remind me of that. I know all too well that I was forced to write them myself. I wrote always 3 times a week and sometimes oftener.
Or do let me read them.
Oh, I couldn't possibly. They would make you far too conceited. The 3 you wrote me after I'd broken off our engagement are so beautiful and so badly spelled. Even now, I can hardly read them without crying a little.
Was our engagement ever broken off?
Of course it was. On the 27th of March. You can see the entry here if you like. Today, I broke off my engagement with Ernest. I feel it is best. The weather still continues charming.
Cecily, why on earth did you break it off? What had I done, Cecily? I had done nothing at all. I am very, distraught to hear you broke off our engagement, especially since the weather was so charming.
Well, it would have hardly been a real engagement if it hadn't been broken off at least once. But I forgave you before the week was out.
Darling, you won't ever break off our engagement again, will you?
No, I don't think I could now that I've actually met you. Besides, of course, there's the question of your name.
Yes, of course.
You must all laugh at me, but it has always been a girlish little dream of mine to love someone of the name Ernest. There's something in the name that inspires absolute confidence. I pity any woman whose husband is not called Ernest.
But my dear child, do you mean to say you could not love me if my name was Ernest? If I had some other name?
But what name?
Oh, any name you like. Algernon, for instance.
But I don't like the name of Algernon.
But my own sweet, dear, loving little darling, do you mean to say you could not love me if my name was, if I had a different name? Algernon? I really don't see it's a bad name. Half the chaps who get into the bankruptcy court are called Algernon. Really, Cecily, do you mean to say you could not love me if my name was Algie?
I might respect you, Ernest. I might admire your character, but I fear I could not give you my undivided attention.
Cecily, your rector here is thoroughly experienced in the rites and ceremonials of the church?
Oh yes, Dr. Trustable is a most learned man. He has never written any books, so you can see how much he knows.
I must see him at once on a most important business.
Oh.
I shan't be away for more than 30 minutes.
Well, consider we've been engaged since February the 14th, and I've only met you today. I feel it is rather hard that you should leave me for such a long amount of time as half an hour. Couldn't you make it 20 minutes?
I'll be back in no time.
What an impetuous boy he is. I like his hair so much. I must enter his proposal into my diary.
A Miss Fairfax has just called to see Mr. Worthing, miss.
Isn't Mr. Worthing in the library?
Mr. Worthing went down to the rectory some time ago.
Pray tell the lady to come down here, and you can bring tea.
Yes, miss.
Miss Fairfax, probably one of the women associated with Jack in his philanthropic work. I do not like women associated with philanthropic work. It is very forward of them.
Miss Fairfax.
Pray, let me introduce myself. My name is Cecily Cardew.
Cecily Cardew, what a very sweet name. Something tells me you're going to be great friends. I like you already more than I can say. My first impressions of people are never wrong.
How nice of you to like me already, even though we have just met. Pray sit down.
I may call you Cecily, may I not?
With pleasure.
And you will always call me Gwendolyn, won't you?
If you wish.
Then that is all quite settled, is it not?
I hope so.
Perhaps this might be a favorable opportunity of my mentioning who I am. My father is Lord Bracknell. You've never heard of Papa, I suppose?
I don't think so.
Outside the family circle, Papa, I'm glad to say, is entirely unknown. I think that is quite as it should be. The home seems to be the proper sphere for the man, and once a man begins to neglect his domestic duties, he becomes painfully effeminate. And I don't like that. It makes men so very attractive. Cecily, Mama, whose views on education are remarkably strict, has brought me up to be extremely short-sighted. It is part of her system. So do you mind my looking at you through my glasses?
Oh, not at all. I'm very fond of being looked at.
You are here on a short visit, I suppose.
Oh no, I live here.
Really? Your mother, no doubt, or some female relative of advanced years besides here also?
Oh no, I have no mother, nor in fact any relations.
Indeed.
My guardian, with the assistance of Miss Prism, has the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
Yes, I'm Mr. Worthing's ward.
Oh, it is strange he never mentioned to me that he had a ward. How secretive of him. He grows more interesting outwardly. I'm not sure, however, that this news inspires me with feelings of unmixed delight. I'm very fond of you, Cecily. I've liked you ever since I met you. But I'm bound to state, now that I know that you're Mr. Worthing's ward, I cannot help expressing a wish that you were, well, just a little older than you seem to be. Not so alluring in appearance. In fact, if I may speak candidly.
Pray do so. I believe when anyone has anything unpleasant to say, one must always be quite candid.
To speak with perfect candor, Cecily, I wish that you were fully 42 and more than usually good for your age. Ernest has a strong, upright nature. He's the very soul of truth and honor. Disloyalty would be as impossible to him as deception. But even men of the noblest possible moral character are extremely susceptible to the physical charms of others. Modern, no less than ancient history, supplies us with many examples of what I refer to. If it were not so, indeed, history would be quite unreadable.
I beg your pardon, Gwendolyn. Did you say Ernest?
Yes.
Oh, but it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is my guardian. It is his brother, his elder brother.
Ernest never mentioned to me that he had a brother.
I'm sorry to say they've not been on good terms for a while.
Ah, that accounts for it. And now that I think of it, I've never heard any man mention his brother. The subject seems most distasteful to me. Cecily, you have lifted a load from my mind. I was growing almost anxious. It would have been terrible if any pride had caused a friendship like ours. Now, are you quite sure that it's not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is your guardian?
Quite sure. In fact, I'm going to be his.
I beg your pardon.
There's no reason why I should make a secret of it to you. Our little county newspaper is sure to chronicle the fact soon. Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married, Miss Carter.
But Mr. Ernest Worthing is engaged to me. The announcement will appear in the Morning Post on Saturday at the latest.
My dearest Gwendolyn, you are under some misconception. Ernest proposed to me exactly 10 minutes ago.
He's certainly very curious, for he asked me to be his wife yesterday afternoon at 5:30. If you care to verify the incident, pray do so. I never travel without my diary. One should always have something sensational to read in the train. I'm so very sorry, dear Cecily, if it is any disappointment to you, but I believe that I have the priority.
It would distress me more than I can tell you if it caused you any mental or physical anguish. But I believe I am bound to state that since Ernest proposed to you, he has clearly changed his mind.
If the poor fellow has been entrapped into any foolish promise, I consider it my duty to rescue him at once, and with a firm hand.
Whatever unfortunate entanglement my dearest has gotten himself into, I will never reproach him with it after we are married.
Do you allude to me, Miss Cardew, as an entanglement? You are presumptuous. On occasions of this kind, it becomes more than a moral duty to speak one's mind. It becomes a pleasure.
Do you suggest that I entrapped Ernest into an engagement? How dare you? This is no time to wear the shallow mask of manners. When I see a spade, I call it a spade.
I'm glad to say that I've never seen a spade. It is obvious that our social spheres are widely different.
Shall I lay the tea here as usual, miss?
Yes, as usual.
Are there many interesting walks in the vicinity, Miss Carter?
Yes, from the top of the hill you can see 5 counties.
5 counties? I don't think I should like that. I hate crowds.
That is why you live in town?
Quite a well-kept garden this is, Miss Carter.
So glad you like it, Miss Fairfax.
I had no idea there were any flowers in the country.
Oh, flowers are as common here as people are in London.
Personally, I cannot understand why anybody manages to exist in the country, if anybody who is anybody does. The country always bores me to death.
Oh, this is what the newspapers call agricultural depression, is it not? I believe the aristocracy is suffering. Tea?
Thank you. Detestable girl, but I require tea. Sugar? No, sugar is not fashionable anymore. Cake or bread and butter? Bread and butter. Cake is rarely seen at the best houses nowadays.
Hand that to Miss Fairfax.
You have filled my tea with lumps of sugar, and though I asked most distinctly for bread and butter, you have given me cake. I am known for the gentleness of my nature and the extraordinary sweetness of my disposition. But I warn you, Miss Cardew, you may go too far.
To save my poor, innocent, trusting boy from the machinations of any other girl, there's no lengths to which I would not go to.
But from the moment I met you, I distrusted you. I felt that you were false and deceitful. I would never deceive you in this manner. And my first impressions of people are invariably right.
It seems to me, Miss Fairfax, that I'm trespassing on your valuable time. No doubt you have many other engagements of this kind to make in the neighborhood.
Ernest! My own Ernest!
Gwendolyn, darling.
A moment. May I ask if you were engaged to be married to this young lady?
To dear little Cecily? Of course not. What could put such a crazy idea in your pretty little head?
Thank you.
I felt there must be some misunderstanding. The man whose arm is at present round your waist is Mr. John Worthing.
I beg your pardon.
This is Uncle Jack.
Jack? Oh!
Here's Ernest.
Darling.
A moment. May I ask, are you engaged to be married to this young lady?
To what young lady? Good heavens, Gwendolyn?
Yes, to Gwendolyn.
What could have put such a crazy idea in your pretty little head?
Thank you, you may.
I knew there must be some slight error. Cecily, the gentleman who is embracing you now is my cousin, Mr. Algernon Moncrief.
Algernon Moncrief? Oh! Are you called Algernon?
I cannot deny it.
Are you really called John?
Deny if I like. I could deny anything if I like, but my name is John. It's been John for years.
A gross deception has been placed upon both of us.
My poor wounded Cecily.
My sweet wronged Gwendolyn. There's just one question I would like to be allowed to put to my guardian.
An admiring idea. Mr. Worthing, what explanation can you offer for pretending to have a... Where is your brother Ernest?
We are both engaged.
We are both engaged to be married to your brother Ernest, so is it of importance to us to know where your brother Ernest is at present?
Gwendolyn, Cecily, it's a terrible thing to have to speak the truth. I've never been reduced to such a painful position. I have no brother Ernest. I've never had a brother Ernest. Not in all my life. None of any kind.
No brother at all?
None.
Had you never a brother of any kind?
Not at all.
It is quite clear, Cecily, that neither of us are engaged to be married to anyone.
It is not a pleasant position for a young girl to find herself in, is it?
Let us go into the house. They will hardly venture to come after us there.
No, men are so cowardly.
Miss Gassner stated things is what you call bumbering, I suppose.
Yes, what a wonderful bunbury it has been. The most wonderful bunbury I've ever had in my life.
Well, you have no right whatsoever to bunbury here.
That is absurd. One has a right to bunbury wherever one chooses. Every serious bunburist knows that.
Serious bumburies? Good heavens.
Well, one must be serious about something to have any amusement in life. I happen to be serious about bunbury. What on earth you're serious about, I haven't the fanciest idea. Everything, I suppose, you have such a trivial nature.
But the only small satisfaction I have in this whole wretched business is that your friend Bunbury's quite exploded. You won't be able to run down to the town as much as you used to. That's quite a good thing, too.
Your brother is a little off color, isn't he, Jack? You won't be able to disappear to London as often as your wicked custom was. And not a bad thing, either.
And as for your conduct towards Miss Carter, you're taking in a sweet, simple, innocent girl like that's perfectly inexcusable. Say nothing unless that she is my ward.
Well, I can see no possible defense for you deceiving a sweet, charming, young, experienced young lady like Mrs. Fairfax, to say nothing, at least, that she is my cousin.
I want to be engaged to Gwendolyn, that is all. I love her.
Well, I want to be engaged to Cecily. I adore her.
Well, I don't think there's much chance of your marrying Miss Cardew.
Well, I don't think there's any likelihood of you and Miss Fairfax being united either.
Well, that is no business of yours.
If it was my business, I wouldn't talk about it. It's very vulgar to talk about one's business. Only people like stockbrokers do that. I'm merely at their party.
How can you sit there calmly eating muffins when we're in this terrible trouble? I can't quite make it out. You seem to me to be perfectly heartless.
Oh, my dear fellow. Well, I can't eat muffins in an agitated manner. The butter will get in my cups. The only way to eat them is quite calmly.
I say it's perfectly heartless that you're eating muffins at all under the circumstances.
My dear fellow, food is the only thing that consoles me. In fact, when I'm in really great trouble, as anyone who knows me intimately would tell you, I will only accept food and drink. Right now, I am eating muffins because I'm unhappy. Besides, I'm particularly fond of muffins.
Well, that is no reason for you to eat them all in that greedy manner.
I wish you would have some tea cake instead. I don't like tea cake.
Good heaven, I suppose a man may be able to eat his own cupcakes in his own muffins in his own garden.
But you just said I thought you just said it was perfectly heartless for you to eat muffins.
So it's perfectly heartless of you under the circumstances. It's a very different thing.
That may be, but muffins are the same. Algie, I wish to goodness.
Algie, I wish to goodness you would go.
I can't possibly go. I haven't had dinner yet. And no one ever goes without their dinner, except people like vegetarians, people of that sort. Besides, I've just made the arrangements with Dr. Chasuble to be christened at 5:45 under the name of Ernest.
My dear fellow, the sooner you go with the nonsense, the better. I made arrangements this morning with Dr. Chasuble to be christened. We will naturally take the name of Ernest. Gwendolyn would wish it. And we can't both be christened Ernest. It's absurd. It's absurd. And I have the perfect right to be christened. It's very likely that I've never been christened by anybody. And so is Dr. Chasuble. And besides, you've been christened already. That is the important thing.
Yes, but I haven't made christened for years.
Yes, but you have. That is the important thing.
Quite so. So I know my constitution can stand. If you're ever unsure about your ever being christened, I dare say you probably shall not venture on it now. It might make you quite ill. You can't have merely forgotten that a very near relative of yours was nearly cured off in Paris by a severe chill.
You said yourself that a severe chill isn't hereditary.
It used to be, but I dare say science is always making wonderful and new improvements in things.
Well, that is nonsense.
Jack, you were at the muffins again. I wish you would. I told you I was particularly fond of muffins.
But I hate tea cake.
Well, then why on earth are you allowed to be served up to your guests? What ideas you have of hospitality?
Algie, I've asked you to leave. Why won't you leave?
I haven't quite finished my tea yet, and there are still 2 muffins left.
Not follow us at once into the house, as anyone else would have done, seems to me to show that they have some sense of shame left.
They have been eating muffins. That seems like repentance.
I don't seem to notice this at all. Couldn't you cough?
But I haven't got a cough.
They're looking at us. What effrontery.
They're approaching. That's very forward of them.
Let us preserve a dignified silence.
Certainly. It's the only thing to do now.
This dignified silence seems to be producing an unpleasant effect.
A most distasteful one.
We shall not be the first to speak.
Certainly not.
Mr. Worthing. Very particular, I must ask you. Much depends on your reply.
Gwendolyn, your common sense is invaluable. Mr. Moncrief, what explanation can you give for pretending to be my guardian's brother in order that I may have my opportunity of meeting you? That seems a satisfactory answer.
Yes, Edward, if you can believe him.
I don't, but that does not change the beauty of his answer.
True, in matters of grave importance, style, not sincerity, is the vital thing. Mr. Worthing, what explanation can you offer for pretending to have a brother? Was order that you might have the opportunity of coming up to town to visit me as often as possible?
Can you doubt it, Miss Fairfax?
I have the gravest doubts upon the subject, but I intend to crush them. This is not a moment for German skepticism. Your explanations seem to be satisfactory, especially Mr. Worthing's.
That seems to have a stamp of truth upon it. I'm more than content with what Mr. Moncrief said. His voice alone inspires one with absolute credulity.
Then you think you should forgive them?
Yes, I mean no.
True, I had forgotten. There are principles at stake that one cannot surrender. Which of us should tell them? The task is not.
Couldn't we both speak at the same time?
An excellent idea. Will you take the time for me?
Certainly. Your Christian names are still an insuperable barrier. That is all.
Christian names? Is that all? But we are going to be christened this afternoon.
For my sake, you are prepared to do this terrible thing?
I am.
To please me, you are ready to face this fearful ordeal?
I am. How absurd to talk of the equality of sexes when questions of self-sacrifice are concerned. Men are infinitely beyond us.
We are.
They certainly have times of physical courage of which we women know nothing of.
Darling.
Lady Bracknell.
Gwendolyn, what does this mean?
Merely that I'm engaged to be married to Mr. Worthing, Mama.
Come here. Sit down. Sit down immediately. Hesitation of any kind is a sign of mental decay in the young and of physical weakness in the old. Apprised, sir, by my daughter's sudden flight by her trusty maid, whose confidence I purchased by means of a small coin, I followed her at once by a luggage train. Her unhappy father is, I'm glad to say, under the impression that she is attending a more than lengthy lecture by the University Extension Scheme on the influence of a permanent income on thought. I do not propose to undeceive him. Indeed, I never undeceived him. I would consider it wrong. But of course you will understand that all communication between yourself and my daughter must cease immediately from this moment. On this point, as indeed on all points, I am firm.
I'm engaged to be married to Gwendolyn, Lady Bracknell.
You are nothing of the kind, sir. And now, as regards Algernon!
Yes, Aunt Augusta.
May I ask if it is in this house that your dear friend, Mr. Bunbury, resides?
Oh no, Bunbury's not here at present. In fact, Bunbury's dead.
Dead? When did Mr. Bunbury die? His death must have been extremely sudden.
Oh, I killed Bunbury this afternoon. I mean, poor Bunbury died this afternoon.
What did he die of?
Oh, Bunbury, he quite exploded.
Exploded? Was he a victim of a revolutionary outrage? I had no idea that Mr. Bunbury was interested in social legislation. If so, he is well punished for his morbidity.
I mean, he was found out. Aunt Augusta, that is what I mean. The doctors found out he could not live, so Bunbury died. That is what I mean.
He seemed to have had great confidence in the opinion of his physicians. I'm glad, however, that he came to some definite course of action and acted under proper medical advice. And now that we have gotten rid of this Mr. Bunbury, Mr. Worthing, may I ask, who is that young person whose hand my nephew Algernon is now holding in what seems to me a particularly unnecessary manner?
Cecily Cardew, my ward.
I'm engaged to be married to Cecily, Aunt Augusta.
I beg your pardon.
Mr. Moncrief and I are engaged to be married.
I do not know whether there is anything peculiarly exciting in the air of this particular part of Hertfordshire, but the amount of engagements that go on seem to me considerably above the proper average that statistics have laid down for our guidance. I think some preliminary inquiry on my part would not be out of the question. Mr. Worthing, is Miss Cardew at all connected with any of the larger railway stations in London? I merely desire information. Until yesterday, I had no idea there were any families nor persons whose origin was a terminus.
Miss Cardew is the granddaughter of the late Thomas Cardew of Belgrave Square and S.B. Dorking, Surrey, Sir Reed, and S.B.
That sounds not unsatisfactory. 3 addresses always inspire confidence, even in tradesmen. But what proof have I of their authenticity?
I have preserved the court guide to the period, and they are open to your inspection, Lady Bracknell.
I have heard strange errors in that publication.
Miss Cardew's family solicitors are Messrs. Markby, and Markby.
Markby, and Markby? A firm of the very highest position in their profession. Indeed, I am even told that one of the Mr. Barkbys is occasionally seen at dinner parties. So far, I'm satisfied.
That is very kind of you, Lady Bracknell. I also have in my possession, you'll be pleased to hear, certificates from Miss Carter's birth, baptism, whooping cough, registration, vaccination, confirmation. Oh, and the measles, both the German and the English variety.
Ah, a life carded with incident, I see. Although somewhat too exciting for a young girl, I'm not myself in favor of premature experiences. However, the time for our departure arrives. Gwendolyn, we have not a moment to lose. But as a matter of form, Mr. Worthing, I must inquire, does Miss Cardew have any little particular fortune?
Oh, about 130,000 pounds in the fund. That is all. Goodbye, Lady Bracknell. So pleased to have seen you.
A moment, Mr. Worthing. 130,000 pounds? And in the funds! Miss Cardew seems to be a most attractive young lady now that I look at her. Few girls of the present age have any really solid qualities. Qualities that last and improve with time. We live, I regret to say, in an age of surfaces. Come here, sweet child. Pretty child, your dress is sadly simple, and your hair looks as if nature might have left it. But we can soon alter all of that. A thoroughly experienced French maid produces a really nice effect in a short amount of time. I remember recommending one to dear Lady Lansing, and after 3 months, her own husband didn't know her.
And after 6 months, nobody knew her.
Kindly turn around, dear. No, the side profile is what I wanted. Yes, quite as I expected. There are distinct social possibilities in your profile. The two weak points in our age are its want of principle and its want of profile. The chin a little higher, dear. Style depends very largely on the way the chin is worn, and it is worn very high at the present moment. Algernon.
Yes, Aunt Augusta.
Miss Cardew seems to have great
Social possibilities.
great social possibilities in her profile.
Cecily is the sweetest, dearest, prettiest girl in the world, and I don't care 2 pence about social possibilities.
Never speak disrespectfully of society, Algernon. Only people who can't get into it do that. Dear child, of course you know that Algernon has nothing but his debts to depend on.
But I do not approve.
But I do not approve of mercenary marriages. When I married Lord Bracknell, I had no fortune of any kind. But I never dreamed of allowing that to stop me. I must admit, I give my consent.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Cecily, you may kiss me.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell.
And for the future, you may refer to me as Aunt Augusta.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
The marriage, I think, had better take place soon.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
I'm not myself in favor of long engagements. They give people the opportunity of finding out each other's character before marriage, which I think is never advisable.
I beg your pardon, Lady Bracknell, for interrupting you, but this engagement is quite out of the question. And I am Miss Cardew's guardian, and she does not come legally of age.
I decline to give my
And I decline to give my consent.
Under what grounds? Algernon is extremely, may I almost say ostentatiously, eligible young man. He has nothing, but looks everything. What more could one desire?
I hate to speak frankly to you, Lady Bracknell, but I don't approve of your nephew's moral character. I suspect him of being untruthful.
Untruthful? My nephew Algernon? Impossible! He's an Oxonian.
I feel there can be no doubt about the matter. During my temporary absence in London, on an important question of romance, he obtained admission to my house under the false pretense of being my brother. Under the name, he drank, I've just been informed by my butler, an entire pipe bottle of Perrier Jus Brew 89 wine, which I was specially reserving for myself. Continuing his disgraceful deception, he succeeded in the process of alienating the affections of my only ward. And subsequently stated to eat and devoured every single muffin. And what makes his conduct all the more heartless is that he knows I don't have a brother. He knows I never had a brother, not even of any kind. I told him myself yesterday afternoon.
Mr. Worthing, after careful consideration, I have decided to entirely overlook my nephew's conduct to you.
Well, that is very generous of you, Lady Bracknell. However, my consent is unalterable. I decline to give my consent.
Come here, sweet child. How old are you, dear?
Well, I'm really only 18, but
I admit to 20 at dinner parties.
You are perfectly right in making some slight alteration. Indeed, a woman should never be quite accurate about her age. It looks so calculating. 18, but admitting to 20 at dinner parties. It will not be long before you are of age and free from the reins of tutelage, so I do not see how your guardian's consent is after all of any importance.
I beg your pardon, Lady Bracknell, for interrupting you again. But according to her grandfather's will, necessity does not come legally of age until she is 35.
That does not seem to be a grave objection. 35 is a very attractive age. Indeed, London is full of women of the age 35. Women that have remained so for years. Lady Dumbleton is an instance. To my own knowledge, she has remained 35 ever since she reached the age of 40, which was a very long time ago. So I see no reason why our dear Cecily should not be even more attractive at the age you mentioned than at present.
Algie, could you wait for me till I was 35?
Of course I could, Cecily. You know I could.
I felt instinctively, but I do not like waiting. I can't even wait for 5 minutes. I'm not punctual myself, but I value punctuality in others. So waiting even for marriage is quite out of the question.
Well, then what is to be done?
I don't know, Mr. Moncrief.
My dear Mr. Worthing, as Miss Cardew states positively that she cannot wait until she is 35, a remark which I'm bound to say shows signs of impatience. I must beg you to reconsider your decision.
My dear Lady Bracknell, the matter is entirely in your hands. The moment you consent to my marriage with Gwendolyn, I'll most gladly allow your nephew to form an alliance with my ward.
You must be quite aware that what you propose is out of the question.
The passionate celibacy is what any of us can look forward to.
That is not the destiny I propose for Gwendolyn. Algernon, of course, can decide for himself. Get up, dear. We have already missed 5, if not 6 trains. To miss any more might leave us to comment on the platform.
Everything is quite ready for the christenings.
The christening, sir. Is that not quite premature?
Both these gentlemen have expressed a desire to be immediately baptized.
At their age, the idea is irreligious and grotesque. Algernon, I forbid you from getting baptized.
Am I to understand that there will be no christenings today?
I don't think it has so much practical value anymore, Dr. Chasuble.
I am grieved to hear such sentiments from you, Mr. Worthing. These savor the heretical views of the anti-Baptists that I completely refuted in my 4 unpublished sermons. However, I must return to the church, for Miss Prism has been waiting for an hour. This information was provided by the pew opener.
Miss Prism? Did I hear you mention a Miss Prism?
Yes.
Pray allow me to detain you for a moment, Dr. Chasuble, but I believe that this matter may prove to be of great importance to Lord Bracknell and I. Is this Miss Prism a woman of a somewhat repellent nature, remotely connected with education?
She is the most indignant of the most respectable of ladies in the very picture of respectability.
It is obviously the same person. In spite of what I hear of her, I must see her at once. Have her be sent for.
Yes, madam. She approaches, she is married.
I was supposed to expect to be in the vestry, dear Canon. I've been waiting for you there for an hour and 3/4.
Prism! Come here, Prism! Prism! Where is that baby? 28 years ago, you, Prism, left Lord Bracknell's house, number 104 Upper Grosvenor Street, in charge of a perambulator that contained a baby of the male sex. You never returned. Weeks later, through the careful inspections of the Metropolitan Police, the perambulator was discovered at midnight in a remote section of Bayswater. It contained a manuscript of a 3-volume novel of a more than usual revolting sentimentality. But the baby was not there. Prism! Where is that baby?
Lady Bracknell, I admit with shame that I do not know. I only wish I did. The plain facts of the case are these. On the morning of the day you mention, a day that will forever be branded on my memory, I prepared as usual to take the baby out in its perambulator. I had also with me a somewhat old but capacious handbag in which I intended to place the manuscript of a work of fiction I had written in my few unoccupied hours. In a moment of mental abstraction for which I can never forgive myself, I deposited the manuscript in the bassinet and placed the baby in the handbag.
Where did you deposit the handbag?
Do not ask me, Mr. Worthing.
Miss Prism, this is of no small importance to me. The happiness of more than one life depends.
I insist on knowing.
I insist on knowing where you deposited the handbag.
I left it in the cloakroom of one of the larger railway stations in London.
What railway station?
Victoria, the Brighton line.
I need to retire to my room for a moment. Gwendolyn, wait here for me.
If you are not too long, I will wait here for you all my life.
I dare not even suspect, Dr. Chasuble. I need hardly tell you that in families of high class, strange coincidences are not supposed to occur. They are hardly considered the thing.
Uncle Jack seems strangely agitated.
Your guardian is very emotional.
The noise is extremely unpleasant. It sounds as if you were having an argument. I dislike arguments very much. They are always vulgar and often convincing.
Now.
I wish you would arrive at some conclusion.
Science is terrible. I hope it will last.
Miss Prism, is this the handbag you left the baby in? Inspect it carefully before you speak. The happiness of more than one life depends on your answer.
It seems to be mine, yes. Here is the injury it received through the upsetting of a Gower Street omnibus in younger and happier days. Here's the stain on the lining caused by the explosion of a temperance beverage, an incident that occurred in Leamington. And here, on the lock, are my initials. I'd forgotten that in an extravagant mood I had them placed there. But that is undoubtedly mine. I'm delighted to have it restored to me. It has been a great inconvenience being without it all these years.
Why is restored to you in this handbag, Miss Prism? I was the baby placed in it.
You?
Yes, mother.
Mr. Worthing, I am married.
Unmarried. My mother admitted this is a serious blow. Why can man cast a rock against one who has suffered? Why is there one law for men and another for women? I forgive you, mother.
Mr. Worthing, there must be some slight error. There is the woman who can tell you who you really are.
Lady Bracknell, I hate to seem inquisitive, but will you please tell me who I am?
I'm afraid that the news I have to give you will not altogether please you. You are the son of my poor sister, Mrs. Moncrief, and consequently, Algernon's older brother.
Algy's elder brother? And I have a brother after all. Cecily, how could you ever doubt that I had a brother? Dr. Topple, my unfortunate brother. Miss Prism, my unfortunate brother. Gwendolyn, my unfortunate brother. Algy, you young scoundrel, you've never treated me with respect in all your life.
I was really out of practice, but I did my best, oh boy. My own one. But what own are you? What is your Christian name now that you are someone else?
Good heavens, I'd quite forgotten the matter. Lady Aunt Augusta, will you please inform me by the time I was placed in the handbag, had I been christened already?
Every luxury that money could buy, including christening, had been lavished on you by your loving and doting parents.
So then I had settled, I was christened. But what name was I given? Let me know the worst.
Being the eldest son, you were naturally christened after your father.
Yes, but what was my father's Christian name?
The general was essentially a...
He was an eccentric.
He was an eccentric man, I admit, but only in later years. And that is what led to the indigestion and marriage in Indian climate and things of that nature.
Algy, can't you recollect what our father's Christian name was?
We were never on speaking terms. He died before I was a year old.
I suppose,
Yes, his name would appear.
I suppose the name would appear in the army lists of the period, I suppose, Aunt Augusta.
Yes, the man was essentially a man of peace. Except for in his domestic life. But yes, I'm sure his name would appear in any of the military directories.
These are the army lists of the period. These should have been my constant study. And generals. Malum, Marshbaum, Magley. What ghastly names they have. Markby, Migsby, Moncrief. Lieutenant 1840, Captain Lieutenant Colonel, Colonel General 1869, Christian names, Ernest John.
Ah, yes, I remember now. The general Christian name was John. Was Ernest. I remember there was a particular reason for disliking the name.
Ernest, my own Ernest. I thought from the first that you had no other name.
Gwendolyn, darling, it's a terrible thing for a man to realize he's been telling you nothing but the truth this whole time.
I can't, for I'm sure you were about to change. What a noble nature you have, Gwendolyn.
I don't know.
Letitia!
Frederick, at last.
Cecily, at last.
Gwendolyn, at last!
My nephew, you seem to be displaying signs of triviality.
On the contrary, Aunt Augusta, I finally realized the vital importance of being earnest.